Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Today I want to talk about the effect heat treatment has on etching Damascus. We're going to look at an axe I'm working on where I did a differential heat treat versus a full heat treat. For the differential heat treat, I actually used the forge where I only inserted the tip of the axe into the forge so I could heat just the front portion of the axe instead of the eye. You can see right here that I'm really only heat treating the first 1 inch of the axe. Do a quick test of the temperature and we're ready to throw it in the quench. I'll leave it in the Parks 50 a little bit longer than I would a knife or a sword, simply because there's a lot more mass that needs cooling down. I really do need to buy more Parks 50. This is for my sword setup, and I'm terrified of dropping the axe to the bottom. Once it's cooled down, you can actually see where the hardened steel is and where the unhardened steel is. There's a little line that starts to appear. One of the questions I see all the time is, how do you get your Damascus so dark? The answer is heat treatment. This is not heat treated, and you'll see it's quite gray and fuzzy as compared to what we're going to look at later. It'll be nice and dark. We've left the axe in the solution. It's my own blend of ferric, sulfuric, and distilled water. I'll put a link as to how to make it. But you can see it etched, but not really dark. The only part that actually etched well is that hardened tip. I'm just not that happy with it, but we're going to complete the etching process just so that we can see exactly what's going on. Before we do that though, lunchtime, some nice venison burgers. I do my etching in 3-minute bouts, where I lightly sand it with starting at 1,000 grit, working my way all the way up to 3,000. I've got a much better description of how I go through it in another video. I'll link it below. You can really start to see that hardening line as you go through more and more etch cycles. And you can definitely tell the tip is hard, but the rest of it is not, and just won't take an etch to that nice dark black. I go through this cycle about 20 times of 3 minutes, and then light sanding with high grit sandpaper. And you can see it's starting to look okay, but you can definitely pick out that line where it was hardened versus where it wasn't hardened. The hardened steel actually looks like it's got a nice etch. I'm even going to try a coffee etch to see if we can get this a little bit darkened. I use just the cheapest brand of instant coffee I can find. I heat up the water and I pour in the whole can. Then we simply dunk the axe in and let it sit. In this case, I let this one sit for about 10 hours and it still didn't do much of an effect. And you can see a nice dark line where we've got hardened steel, a good looking etch in that part, but the other stuff is just kind of gray and fuzzy and I just don't like it. So we're going to go back to the kiln this time and do a full heat treatment on the entire axe. If you're interested in how I made this kiln, I'll put a link in the description. I built it for about 1/3 of the cost of buying a kiln. So we'll renormalize the axe and then we'll go into heat treating it and then re-etching it. I always think it's so cool when you actually look at the red hot axe and you can see the Damascus patterns, and then especially as they start to cool, they really start to pop without etching. Because I've already heat treated this, I'm going to make sure I go through a full 3 normalization cycles before we actually heat it up for quenching. Notice this time when we actually quench it, the entire axe is at temperature. Last time it was only just the tip, so this time it's the whole axe. I was a little bit worried after I quenched this. I could still see a faint line where I had done the first hardening. I don't know if that was just scale or anything else. So I was pretty nervous coming up to the actual etching of this. But before we do that, time to do a little bit of tempering. I actually came into the house to do the tempering just simply because it is so freaking cold here right now. I needed to warm up. After repeating the exact same etching process, you can see the difference. Holy cow. The one on the left has just the tip heat treat. The one on the right has the full heat treat. I know which one I want. If you like these, please like and subscribe. They really help me out. Thanks.